Microphone. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the South Hams Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Before we start the meeting proper, I would just like to invite the Vice Chairman to say a few words. Councillor Smedden.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure that all of you will have seen the email this morning from Darryl White announcing the sad passing of Simon Wright. Simon was a valued councillor and colleague who was a member from 2011 up to 2019, and in the last council served as deputy leader. I'm sure members of this committee and members generally would wish to extend their sympathy to Simon's wife Mary and to their children. And the chairman has asked me to do this because obviously I knew Simon, whereas the chairman only joined the council after the last election. So as a mark of respect, we would ask that everybody stands for a minute's silence, please. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smedden. Okay, so again, welcome members, welcome councillors, welcome officers. We will start, please, with item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from councillors Birch, Chown, Jones, Rose, Sweet, and Councillor Long, when he gets here, will be substituting for Councillor Sweet.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the committee held on the 16th of June 2022. You've seen the minutes, members. Are you happy that we move them?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Yep. Well, thank you, Councillor. And yep, seconded by Councillor Taylor. Thank you very much. All those in favour, if I'm happy with those minutes? Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you very much. Clearly passed. Right, okay. Item 3 is urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman. I have no urgent business. Item 4, division of the agenda, to consider whether the discussion of any item of business is likely to lead to the disclosure of exempt information. Not aware of any. Item 5, declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. No. Okay. Thank you very much. Item 6, public forum. Do we have any issues raised by the public?
No, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. In which case we'll move straight on to item 7, Better Lives for All, thematic update on the economy. And Councillor Bastang, good morning.
And thank you to both you and the Vice Chairman for showing that mark of respect to Simon and to the rest of the members. Thank you. Introducing this topic on the economy, I'd like to say that the South Hams is home to some of the most beautiful towns, coastal and rural communities, and natural capital in the UK. So it is no surprise that the visitor economy is one of the largest sectors, making up about 14% of the GDP of our total economy. It's an incredibly exciting time for South Hams economic development work at this moment. Whilst I am pleased to report that we are on track with our corporate strategy objectives and our delivery plan. These only tell a small part of the picture. We are on the cusp of submitting a bid for £1 million over 3 years for UK SPF funding, which would provide, and this is what it would provide, business support activities that will directly help our business operating within the visitor economy. A specialist package of support for farmers to adopt regenerative farming techniques, which will also include activities to strengthen links between local food production and local communities, activities to protect and enhance our marine industries while helping the sector to decarbonise, a strategic framework for active travel which will better link visitors and local residents with our visitor attractions and our natural capital. As if that wasn't enough, we're also bidding for £15 million of levelling up funding to deliver a westbound off-slip at Lee Mill. We hope to find out if we are successful this autumn and will need to be ready to deliver as the timelines are tight. Members will also be aware that we have successfully landed a bid for a Freeport, approved last month, and work continues at pace to see that delivered. The Freeport company has been formed, an interim chief executive appointed, and the tax site designation has been achieved in Plymouth and Sherifford, and we aim to get Langage designated in September. This morning I have with me Chris Shears, and he is the Economic Development Specialist in Place and Enterprise, and he's been undertaking a volume of work over the last 12 months, and he's also been standing in for Sarah Gibson, who was the head of placemaking, who left us a while ago. So I'll hand over to Chris because I think he would like to say a few words to you as well.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. And I just thought that it would be worth giving a quick update and overview of what's happening within the visitor economy at the moment in the South Hams. So I've got a slide that I don't know how we can. There we go. Which shows the parking data for the South Hams over the last few years. So each of the coloured lines is a different year. And what you can see is that effectively it closely aligns with sort of the health of our visitor economy throughout the seasons. So what you can see, you've got your peak around sort of the July, August time, and then it slowly declines over September, October, November, and then settles in sort of the trough around the winter months before picking up in the following year. What we've seen is that if we consider 2019 to be sort of the last sort of normal year in inverted commas for the pre-COVID, etc. During COVID, obviously, there was a significant drop-off in tourist visitors coming into the area for obvious reasons. But then last year, what we saw was really sort of a bumper year in terms of the visitor economy, with accommodation and what have you being filled out, and sort of a shallower decline across the course of the year as well compared to what we've previously experienced. What we're seeing this year is sort of almost more of a return to normality. So you can see the short yellow line on the chart there, which is only a few months in, obviously, for this financial year, but it's slightly above where we were at in 2019, which is positive. But we are seeing more of a return to normality as people are using holidays abroad more and what have you. Is that when during COVID, a lot of our accommodation businesses were changing their policies to give sort of last minute cancellations and things like that, to make it easier for potential customers to make use of their sites. What we're finding now is that a lot of people are sort of hedging their bets and booking a holiday in Devon, but also booking a holiday abroad and using the opportunity to cancel at the last minute if their holiday abroad is able to go ahead. So that's an issue that we expect will resolve itself simply by businesses will start changing their policies back to being less generous to sort of last minute cancellations. But it is something that we have noticed. We're also seeing with some of our major attractions, we're seeing them struggling somewhat at the moment. Not to the point that we're significantly concerned, but we have seen sort of visitor numbers decline this year so far. And part of that is simply down to the cost of living issues that are actually playing out within the business community as well. So as their costs are increasing, they're having to put their prices up, and as people are experiencing the cost of living impact on themselves, that price increase for visiting some of our tourist attractions is having a dissuasive effect on whether they visit those or not. And we're working closely with our visitor attractions to make sure that doesn't become a lasting issue. So we're also trying to extend the visitor economy and the season. So I think that, as I said, parking data is very closely aligned with sort of the trends throughout the visitor season. And so in order to sort of monitor that, you'd expect to see the trough that we've got on the graph at the moment. That decline over time should become shallower, and the actual baseline should stay higher if we're successful in extending the season. So I just thought that would probably be of interest to members here. Do you want me to talk through the report, or are you?
If you, Mr. Hughes, if you've got things to add, then
if you're happy with the report before me, then...
Well, in which case I think at this stage we'll what we normally do on thematic updates is that you've given us a report with action points. We usually look at the action points one by one. I give members the opportunity to ask questions, and then we can take it from there, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Bastow, Mr. Hughes. We will look at the report then. So for the benefit of page 13 on our report pack on Modern Gov, we start with 1.1, which is enhancing the coastal areas. Members, you've had this. Does anyone have any questions on 1.1? Yeah, Councillor McKay, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, bear with me. I need to find it. Well down. No, there it is. It talks about coastal areas, and obviously the marine sector is a bigger beast than just the coastal areas. So I'd like to understand how. I mean, I know that there has been, as referred to, an application for the SPF that we should get an answer for is going to be submitted in August, but I'm not entirely clear what's going to be in it. And I'd like to understand, I think we should have some idea as to what in. I mean, I'm interested in the farming side of it, as what's been saying, and you were talking about how to enhance local production and how farms can sell their products locally. That would be interesting, but I'd like to know exactly what is being proposed there. And with regard to the marine side of things, as I mean, I know Chris Brook is here. He'll know that I've taken an interest in the Baltic Wharf development, and I'm trying to see whether how that can be enhanced to become an area of marine excellence, as opposed to knocking it down, building houses. There's all of that going on. I'd just like to have more detail about what the SPF application is about and exactly what's in it, really. Thank you.
Thank you. So within our UK SPF program of or suite of projects that we're looking at delivering, we've got effectively the initial work that will be going on is around sort of baseline evidence gathering. So it's establishing where we're at the moment, what the impact of the marine economy is on our wider economy, and the size and scale of it. And how that fits into the regional and national picture as well. We're taking some broad work around that, so covering the entirety of the marine economy, but we're also looking at specific pieces of work within that, such as establishing the impact and the carbon footprint of Salcombe Harbour, for example. And so as I say, we're not just taking a generic overview of the entirety of the marine economy. there will be specific bespoke pieces that that we've previously discussed around SPF within that. So yeah, so I can probably provide some further information in terms of we're looking at programs around building on the Matamel program around sort of electrification of vessels and things like that. We're looking at stuff around end of life of vessels as well, and making sure that so some interesting work around it, looking at the sort of recyclability of vessels when they reach the end of their life and things like that as well. So there's some quite innovative pieces of work going on within that that I think would be of benefit to the wider economy as well as just the marine sector. But yeah, so we've got quite a varied program. I think that currently on the list of specific projects within the marine sector, I think I've got about 13 or 14 specific things, which yeah, I'm happy to share as much of that as possible before the bid is submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Any other questions on 1.1? I have one, but I'm just okay. Well, one from me with reference to Councillor Baston when you were talking about farming and support for farmers. I don't know. Can you tell me how that will work will that dovetail in with, for example, FIPL farming in the protected landscape monies in the AONB? Will that work as a complementary measure, or because I'm assuming it wouldn't be working in contradiction? I wonder if you could just talk to us about that.
Yes, absolutely. We're being very careful to make sure that we're not sort of duplicating through the work that we're looking at through UK Shared Prosperity Fund, but we're also making sure that we're looking at what's already happening on the ground and making sure that we're not treading on people's toes or conflicting, so that the portfolio of projects that we're pulling together are dovetailing with various activities. And actually, I think that that's going to create even better results than it would if we were just taking these projects in isolation and looking at them without taking other programs into account. Within the agri element, we're looking at some significant work through the Agri Alliance, which will include some sort of wider business support for the agri sector, as well as some really sort of bespoke pieces of work in agri around the different tech advances and things like that, and how farming businesses can be encouraged to adopt those and to adopt the various practices that are emerging as the sort of farming sector develops, and so making sure that we're at the forefront of some of those things. So working with universities as well and skills organisations, and making sure that sort of emerging research is being applied to our farming communities. We're also looking at a programme of support around regenerative farming as well. So looking at how we can encourage our agri sector to adopt regenerative farming processes, which I don't know. Bit of open a can of worms if people don't know what regenerative farming is, but basically it's a move towards a sort of more natural land management approach to the farming sector. So moving away from sort of pesticides and sort of chemical processes, and moving back to sort of natural processes with a very heavy focus on sort of soil quality improvements and things like that through using natural processes and shallower tilling and things like that. So it's quite an interesting approach to it. There's also knock-on benefits in terms of things like using space that can't be used for crop growing to plant fast-growing trees, for example, that can be used for fuel, but can also be used for natural flood risk mitigation. So there's a wide range of knock-on benefits, including sort of biodiversity and ecological enhancements that come through adopting that approach. And so yeah, we're looking at that across the South Hand, and specific projects around that to be put in place. And we've also got interest from Dartmoor National Park Authority as well around that as well. So looking at how that can be applied more in the moorland areas as well. So there's opportunities to work in partnership with them to enhance the programme. And there's also another bit just to complete the suite. So we've got sort of the generic business support and the specialised business support. Then we've got the sort of transformative action around shifting towards regenerative farming processes. And then we're also looking at a programme to potentially work with Riverford, the Apricot Centre, and over in West Devon, the Good Food Loop, looking at how we can better link our communities to the crops and produce that is coming out of our local farming system. So making sure that the things that are produced in our local area are being supplied to our local area, so that people get the health and well-being benefits of that, but also so that you're sort of reducing the carbon footprint in terms of mileage travel for food and all those other wider benefits as well.
Chris, if I come in there, I fear you're going to get some questions now, because are members of the farming community on this panel. So,
First of all, I was going to say thank you. So the short answer then is yes, it dovetails. That's fine. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay. But as Councillor Bastow predicted, you have now invited questions on specific points. First from Councillor McKay and then Councillor Taylor.
If I may very quickly, I shall endeavour to be brief in future.
No, it's always great to have officers who are fully briefed. Councillor McKay.
No, I mean, everything that you said is music to my ears, frankly. So it's wonderful. And what I'm asking is a practical question. I mean, the ward that I'm part of, represent, I suppose, is very rural and full of farmers. What is it? How practically are you communicating what you're doing to the farming community and getting them involved?
I think in the early stages, we're planning for some significant communication work to go on between the organisations that we're looking to work with and the farming community. We're also setting up a sort of board for each of the themes within the UK SPF programme that will include representation from members as well, and support organisations, and well, I hope so. So yeah, so that's an ongoing conversation, but we think that will be achieved.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm an ex-farmer. Is that the right word? Ex. So I can't gain anything, yes, but I mean, at the moment, the AOMB has got funding for basically the AOMB. So this is going to help outside of the AOMB, which is great, because at the moment we've just got a year left on funding, I think, for the FIPL, they call it, that I'm a member of, and that is purely for the AOMB. So that's good news. Thank you for that. I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, Councillor. We mentioned about bidding for grants from government for the Lee Mill project. If that's not successful, is there a plan B?
I don't think there is at this stage. We're everything crossed to make sure that we're doing that bid on behalf of Devon County, actually, because they are submitting bids for other projects in the county. And they ask us to submit that bid, but I don't think they have a plan B, because it comes down to finance in the end, and county are very short of finance at the moment. But that, keep your fingers crossed that goes through.
Thank you very much. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a general, on my ward covers, I would say, farming and marine, so I've got a vested interest in this. My comment is about the wider organisations, because if you look at there's a lot of work that has gone on in the past from the universities, Exeter, Plymouth, and the importance of linking to those. I'd like a little bit more understanding of how, we'll be working with those sort of organisations. And also when you're into the farming area, obviously there's a lot of conversation around people like Woodland Trust, Devon Wildlife Trust. How much of linkage and conversation is there with organisations like the NFU and others? And I think they're important, because there's a lot of work, there's a lot of money being hauled in by various organisations like that, and I think we should be sort of trying to amortise that across the whole of the South Hams. And I'm pleased I picked up what Councillor Taylor has said about the importance of, there's a lot of work goes on in the AOMB within the Dartmoor National Park, but there's a large chunk of the South Hams that falls out of those areas, and it would be important to make sure that we get that spread in both the marine area and the farming area, and be it wildlife protection, but also the landscape protection out there and the landscape enhancement, which before any of the farming or ex-farming, the constantly it is said, and it's quite right, that the farmers are the people who have shaped this landscape. And I think, we've got to take that on board for the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chairman. You're mentioning the NFU. Now, I would have thought the best place to start if you want to contact farmers, farming community, is in the Young Farmers Club, because at least 2 or 3 of us present here this morning probably got where we are today through Young Farmers Club, being a member of the Young Farmers Club. And they are the people, the youngsters are the ones you need to contact, because they will be the ones that are au fait with all computing, IT, the technology and all the rest of it, whereas the older members of the farming community, they are not so keen on IT and probably self-taught and thinking, oh God, do I have to do it that way? We have to do all our returns nowadays have to be done via IT, information technology, and sending on to various departments, government departments, wherever. And it's not so easy for them, but I do feel that young farmers have learned all that they need to learn and have been to college, etc., and they will be the ones that are in the know. Now, as far as producing food is concerned, because I do feel that the government at present is trying to talk us away from producing food, more into wild greening and all the rest of it. And we've seen that on our own doorstep with Sherifford, who have now gone away from producing the wine there, and they've come over to the other side of the river. They're actually in my ward and doing very nicely, thank you. But it's worrying, really, because I feel the time is going to come when there's going to be a national food shortage if we're not careful. And plus the fact that the price of food is controlled, whether we like it or not, by the supermarkets. And it's all very well saying we've got to produce all this food locally, which is fine, and we like to buy a local food, but the supermarkets don't care where it comes from as long as it's cheap. And the majority of housewives want cheap food, and so they will go to the supermarket, fill up their baskets, and that will be that for the week or fortnight, however long they choose to shop. We have noticed the price of food is escalating recently. And also, if I could move on then to the visitor numbers, because I do know visitor numbers are much lower this year. We've got a lot of accommodation which is empty, and I think a lot of people have jumped on the Airbnb bandwagon, and people are buying up cottages to let out, which could have been homes for people to start in, which is making pricing our young people out of the market in our villages. And I think we have got to move a foot to try and regulate that. But I think that's also very important too. And I think there's a lot of food for thought within this programme, which hopefully we can do something about. Thank you.
You're learning the dangers of using the F word, Mr. Hughes. Councillor Smith.
I thought the chairman. I thought the chairman turned it on for me. You're fairly well briefed with regard to the farming side of it, so congratulations on that. Yeah, I would agree with what Councillor Rowe said. I think we definitely need to be engaging with the young farmers and the younger members of the farming community, because they are the ones who are more open to to new methods, reintroduction of old methods, and they are the ones who are going to be more affected by climate change, etc. as we go forward. So I think we need to focus on that, and I'm sure we'd be happy to help you do that. I was also interested. I mean, I know when this was presented before, it said that we were going to be working with the Apricot Centre and with Riverford. Have you got any details of how that's specifically going to work?
Yeah. So with regards to the Apricot Centre, I think that they're going to be the lead organisation for delivering some of the support around moving businesses towards regenerative farming processes. That's their specialism. They have previously focused purely on skills packages, but we're actually working with them to broaden that into sort of wider business support for the agri sector. And then with regards to the Riverford activity, we're looking at that more around the sort of expansion of getting food out to local communities, and also creating links further afield from their existing network to sort of grow their sort of supply chain, but also their network of being able to get food out there through some of the smaller organisations and community groups that are out there as well. So trying to establish better sort of collaborative working within local communities to ensure that that products are getting to market.
Great, thank you. Members, are we happy then with 1.1? In which case we'll move on to 1.2, which is the marketing and advertising of the area. Members, do you have any questions on 1.2? I know those of us that follow the District Council Facebook pages will know that there's a fair amount of this on social media regularly anyway. But anyone? Councillor Spencer.
It probably won't come as any great surprise to people around the table here that I would like to talk about my place. This was discussed back in the March meeting we had here with a board agreement with staying. Just as a reminder, my place was funded in part by the Welcome Back Fund, and that was part of the European Regional Development Fund. And part of the application process, part of the guidelines that were produced by the fund at the time, asked the applicants to engage with parish and town councils, and also to engage with them specifically to improve delivery outcomes for community. It was about high streets as well, and there was an expectation, at least in my mind, that there would be some benefit here to rural environment. My ward is entirely rural. Don't have the benefit of a high street in any of my wards. None of my parishes have a road called High Street, but they have multiple businesses and multiple events, and the community is very, very engaged in promoting itself to its residents and to a limited extent externally as well. I wrote to Placeland and Enterprise and asked about this lack of engagement with parishes, and I didn't actually get a response or an answer to my question, but I did get a promise that, and this was in November last year, I did get a promise that in the campaign leading up to, or what was left of the campaign leading up to Christmas, there would be engagement. And certainly in terms of the spring and summer campaigns, more so. Now I've spoken to 2 out of the 4 of my wards, of my parishes rather, spoken to their chairman, and they say that they're not aware of anything that we're doing as a district council. They're not aware of any anything that they can access. They don't appear to have been consulted. I do accept that parish clerks sometimes don't pass everything on to chairs, but you know, that happens, and that may be part of the reason why this doesn't seem to be happening. But so my concern is that a lot of time and effort has quite rightly gone into the high streets and the towns and the big towns, and in my view, very little, if anything, has gone into the rural communities, and they have their own high streets, and they have their own businesses, and so I'm keen to find some way of engaging with those community groups in one way, shape, or form. So I wonder what my place does for marketing and advertising of the rural areas, not just in my ward, because I know a number of councillors around the table here have rural wards themselves. They may have their own views, but they do have their own. I know that clearly. So that's loosely my question. What are our plans? What are our thoughts about getting some marketing and advertising of the area into rural areas specifically?
I think that's a very good point. I would say that around the Christmas campaign, that I believe that parishes were contacted around the My Place campaign around Christmas, following on from that November meeting. However, I would accept that communication hasn't been there for the spring and summer campaigns, and I think there's a number of issues with that relating to the funding itself drying up. And also the capacity within the service as well. But that's not a great excuse. I accept that. But what I will say is that we will endeavour to make sure that as the campaign moves on, we will ensure that parishes are contacted and have the opportunity to feed into the My Place campaign, and also that we can. My suggestion would be that we have regular contact rather than sort of on an ad hoc basis, just to give an update to parishes and wards alike, so that they're kept abreast of what the proposals are, but also so that they can help shape up their own local campaigns. Particularly, I know that we've just been through the hottest few days on record, but we're already looking at starting activities to explore the Christmas campaign. So I think that we will make a concerted effort to ensure that parishes are engaged through that and able to shape how that develops.
Please.
Sorry, thank you. People around the table will also know I'm a great believer in SMART objectives, T and SMART being timeframes. And rather than telling us that, I'm glad you acknowledged the fact that parishes haven't been contacted in the way that might have been intended. But can I ask when they are going to be intended? When are they going to be contacted? What are the timeframes for this? And can the ward councillor, not just me for my ward, but any ward councillor, be directly involved in that process? Because they are the key, or one of the keys, to engaging with the rural communities. And I really feel that they have a valuable offering to this whole principle of inclusion.
Yeah, I don't have. I'd need to speak to my colleagues, but what I would suggest is that within the next fortnight we will aim to make some contact, and I think what we probably value is input from yourself in terms of suggesting a way forward. So if you're happy to do so, then I'd like to get myself and a couple of my colleagues to engage with you to discuss how you think that should look, and to help take that forward.
Sorry, Chair. Just not just me, but yes, please, absolutely, including me. But there are councillors around the table here and those who aren't, who are in exactly the same situation as I am, and face the same disappointments that we've experienced by these issues in the past. So I'm not saying don't contact me, please do.
Yeah.
But please look at others as well, because they'll all have their opinion.
And to say we'd also welcome any feedback from other members as well who do wish to engage.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. It does say here about making a difference to the appearance of the street scene. Now, I think I'm not alone in thinking that the first point of our street scenes should be that the streets are clean and tidy. And I think we all know that in our towns and in our villages, we are seriously lacking in having street cleaning like we used to several years ago. And I think one point that we do need before anything else is to put street cleaning at the top of the list. And we have a lot of takeaways in our towns and even in our villages, and we can be near to a major takeaway, and a lot of rubbish just gets thrown out and people don't bother to take it on with them or put it in their bins. And I do feel that this is one experience which should be at the top of the list. It's nice to see bunting, street planters and all the rest of it. Street planters need to be put in position where people can't fall over them because they can be a danger. But it's nice to see our streets in our towns and villages clean and tidy, but there's a lot left to be desired there, I think. So perhaps you could put that on your list too, please. It's probably not your remit, but and pass it on to whoever's responsible. Thank you.
Mr. Hughes, you'll be delighted to know that I'm going to swivel straight over to Mr. Maloney at that point.
Thank you, Chair. That will be my responsibility, Councillor Rowe, and as you know, we will be taking the contract back from FCC in October, and street scene and street cleaning is one of the key priorities. Yes.
Councillor Bastone, listening to the conversation around the My Place campaign and looking at this item, are you still comfortable as the lead member that we are at green on track?
Yes, it's been unfortunate. Poor old Chris has been left on his own, really, because Sarah Gibson left and he had to take on her job. But there was also another young lady who was doing that work of contacting the parish councils. Is she due to be replaced shortly?
I don't know the situation.
Well, I'm not sure, but is she due to be replaced, Mr. Brooke? In the wider sense, yes, he says.
No,
But that was the main problem, that she dealt with the Christmas promotion, but left and wasn't around for the spring promotion. But then again, we did run out of money as well.
no, I fully appreciate that. It's only that this is a snapshot now. And
Yeah.
now, and you know, at the moment, the key highlights are that My Place, it says, this also includes a focus campaign through the spring and summer where all town and parish councils have been asked to let us know. Well, I mean, Councillor Spencer's highlighted that as of now, that isn't happening. It's going to happen. I fully appreciate the staffing issue.
But we've run out of money as well, so.
So should it not be Amber then? Should it not be Amber? Is that not the point? You know, I mean, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but did you want to talk, Mr. Brooke? Did you want to come in? No. I'm only asking the question because, you know, the whole point of this scrutiny body is that we're trying to be a critical friend. And so my question is, as of this moment in time, should it be Amber? And then it may be next time it might be green. But there's no point in us just saying it's green if Councillor Spencer's proved that it's not happening. I don't know whether you want to ask that, Mr. Hughes.
Prepared to accept that.
Yeah, I would say that there is still a successfully running My Place campaign across the district, but I think that it needs broadening into to be more inclusive of the parishes and others who would like to be a part of that programme. So that's, but yeah, I'm happy to take steer from you guys.
Sven.
Yeah, I guess I would sort of tend to agree with the chair. If we're reviewing this, then possibly, you know, there's from what Councillor Spencer's said, etc., there's possibly room for improvement. So, you know, maybe, you know, I'm not sure whether it's the remit of this committee to, well, I guess it is to alter them. Maybe if it were put to Amber, because, you know, we would like to see some improvement.
Councillor McKay.
I mean, we've got three colours here, haven't we? It's green, amber, or red. So presumably, there has to be some sort of methodology applied to this. So, you know, if you've only achieved 30% of what you're set out to do, you're in the red. If you've achieved 60, 70%, you're amber. If you've achieved above that, then you're green. And I would have suggested from what has been said that we're into the green region, really, even though there are obviously problems.
Does anyone else have a view? This is the point of this committee. This is the point of this committee is to do exactly what we're doing now. This is not critical. This is positive. You know, members, I'm interested in your views. You know, Councillor Spence has given you the description of what it means. Are you happy that we are in this on track, or do you think that we are slightly off track but plan in place? It's our committee. It's your call, members. Any thoughts? Councillor Spencer.
I didn't raise this to upset you, Councillor Baston, on this particular issue, and it never dawned. I'd certainly never thought about taking it off green. But one thing that we have to be, all of us, we have to be brutal about being honest. And I think if it is in green, I don't think we're being entirely honest with ourselves. It's ourselves we've got to be honest with. Whilst I hadn't contemplated any action in this particular area, I must admit I support what Councillor Smurden's just been saying.
Anybody else? Councillor Ray.
Yeah.
Councillor Ray.
I think it's a bit of a balancing act, actually, if that's the right terminology. But well, we're not actually there yet, but we're on track. But I would say I don't think we're quite green yet. We are in towards amber. So I would probably support that at this present moment.
Yeah, I think it's really important to say, members, that this isn't, as I say, I go back to saying, you know, if we recommend that this is amber because we're not comfortable that my place is quite there yet, then as far as I'm concerned, we're doing our job. I don't think, you know, no one's going to go away and fall on their sword. It's a positive thing. Yeah, well, Councillor Smurden has proposed, and I think Councillor Spencer has seconded effectively, that we put this on amber. I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, members, been proposed and seconded. How would you like to vote? Those in favour of the proposal, please show. Yeah, I think. Those against? Yes. Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favour and 1 against. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think that's really passed. We'd like to see that one as amber, please, and then obviously we look forward to it coming back. You know, with the concerns that Councillor Spencer's highlighted. From there.
I'm confident it'll be green next time.
Oh, Councillor Bastone, and this committee will be thrilled that that's the case. Oh, absolutely. You know, that's our job. Yeah. Okay. We will move on to 1.3, development of a specific budget for the promotion of the visitor economy. Any questions on this one, members? No, well, while you think, I have one from the chair. The very first line of the key highlights. Can you just, Mr. Hughes, can you explain, or Councillor Bastone, little interest in pooling resources, but significant interest in working collaboratively. Can you just talk around that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we've been liaising with all town councils around this, and I think that it was felt that if there was a pooling of sort of marketing resources, that would take away some control that sort of local areas had within with regards to their own marketing. However, they were all very keen to see a continuation of collaborative working in terms of the marketing activities so that we could have stronger campaigns together rather than disparate approaches to it.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on this one? Councillor Burt.
The second point, it says an annual partnership agreement has been signed with Visit Devon for 3 years. Does that include financial support?
Yes, there will be a small amount of financial support through that.
Good. There are other organisations. One of the other one, yeah. Obviously, you know, both the chairman and myself are actually members of the national park, because you do actually have Visit Dartmoor as well. Have we had any any contact with them?
Yeah. So we're not doing work directly with them, but we know of them and we have contact with them. But the other organisation that we're looking at is Visit Devon. So you've got Visit Devon and you've got Visit South Devon, who sort of sit alongside each other. Yeah. And so we're working with both of those organisations at the moment.
I think that is a problem with Devon as a whole. I mean, if you see Cornwall, Visit Cornwall, it's a whole county and they got one spokesperson. Devon is split up and it makes life really difficult.
I know from my own experience.
And personally, I would have liked seeing some support for our local tourist information centres, but we'll work on that one.
Any other questions, members, on 1.3? No, in which case it's green, so we will leave it there if you're all happy. We'll move on to 1.4, provision of grants for our key towns and advice for businesses. Do you have any questions on this one, members? Councillor Spencer.
Almost afraid to say anything, sorry. it is, and the subject heading is key towns and advice for businesses. But I come back to, there are places in South Hams that are other than key towns. I certainly like to see some sort of support mechanism for rural businesses who have not just the same problems as town businesses, but have additional problems of their rurality, if word. So I'm not attempting to say anything about this particularly, except the fact that should it include some sort of rural support.
If I may, just very quickly. So
Yeah, please, cheers to you.
So the actual objective that was set in the action plan was the provision of grants for our key towns and advice for businesses. So our response naturally responds to that objective. But we have been supporting businesses within our rural communities. There's no sort of favoritism being shown between the businesses that get supported through, for example, Business Information Point and the work that we do with them. And within the Shared Prosperity bid, there'll be no sort of favouritism shown either with that. The grants that we delivered over the sort of Christmas period and through February and March to the business community, we covered the entire patch with regards to the where businesses were located that received support through that programme.
Mr. Molyneux.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just worth pointing out to the committee that up until 12 months ago, we didn't have any economy team. So we have gone from offering very little support to our economy, and we've only got limited resources, lead member Councillor Bastone said. And I think this is an excellent start, but members need to put in context that it's still a very small team, and this is, you know, some of the actions we can do with the resources that we've got available to us. Could we do more? Yes, if we had more resources, we could do a lot more. But the reality is we've got the resources that we have, and it's still been a significant investment from this council in the first place. Just wanted to make that point, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Molyneux. Councillor McKay.
Can I ask about the £170,000? You have a contract with Business Information Point. How much of that £170,000 has gone into that contract, and how much has actually gone to local business?
I can get that information for you. I don't have it.
Any other questions on 1.4, members? Councillor Long.
Just one on the point of, you know, it says provision of grants for our key towns and advice for businesses, and obviously that provision of grants is historic. So I'm assuming that we're not looking for additional grant provision going forward, and it's solely for the Business Information Point. So I think it's a little bit deceptive where it says provision of grants. We're not continuing with grant provision.
I think you're potentially correct on that. I think that through UK Shared Prosperity Fund, it's unlikely that we're going to be delivering direct grants to businesses as well. But we are constantly, I hate the term horizon scanning, but we are constantly looking at what's out there and seeing what funding is available so that we can try and draw down support for our business communities. And in some cases that may take the form of grants, in others it may take the form of direct business support.
Mr. Brooke.
Thank you, Chairman, and good question from Councillor Long. I think the point we've got here is we've got a high level corporate strategy, and this is an action plan that feeds into that. The action plan will need to be updated and amended as things change, and your point is exactly right, which is we wanted to make those grants available from the funding we had at the time. We also want to continue to support businesses across the patch, not just in the towns, Spencer. And I think the next iteration of this, which members will want to feed into and the officers will want to work on pretty soon, actually, for the next year, will reflect those changes. But just wanted to say that, really. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. Okay, anything else on 1.4, members? No, okay, right. Well, I'm going to disregard 1.5. I think there's been quite enough conversation, both in council and planning committee and other places on Ivy Bridge. You'll all know that Obviously, this is not able to deliver. I don't see that there's any purpose in us having conversations about that, quite frankly. So I'm going to go straight on to 1.6. All of Southam's main towns will have had the opportunity to update or create a town centre plan by 2024. This is a really interesting one, because my immediate question from the chair is that the key risk, number 2, town councils decide not to prepare a town centre plan, is clearly pretty huge, isn't it? What's your what's the state of play with that? Thank you, Mr. Brett.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to retire to the stalls shortly, I think. I think it's varied. So I think, yeah, to be totally candid, we've got different levels of engagement on different topics across all of the town councils. I think we've got to just offer the same consistent approach to all of them. Some of them have more resources, you know, a different member collection with a different skill set. So it is very real. I think we've got it in there because I don't think we will get them from across all the towns, and I don't think that's a problem. The offer is there. If they want to take it, fantastic. Let's work collaboratively, and we can build it into our long-term strategic plans. And if it's not, that's okay, because there's plenty of excellent work going through the neighbourhood plans and through the joint local plan, and that gets reviewed. So I suppose I'm comfortable if we don't achieve it across all of our main towns.
Because it's more of an open offer and aspiration than perhaps some of the elements.
Exactly, Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions on 1.6? Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, can I just ask what the difference is then if a town doesn't take up the offer, or if they don't, what is there going to be any difference? What happens in the town?
Really, it's just really helpful. I mean, why wouldn't a town, through its elected representatives, which is closer to what the thoughts of the local residents are, not want to take up the offer? That's a question for them to answer. In planning terms, if we have something from town councils, then that gets fed in through neighbourhood plans if they are required, you know, if they haven't already got one, and ultimately into our strategic planning document. But there will always be a vision for a town in the strategic plan. It just depends where it starts from. Does it start from us thinking about it and then engaging and consulting as we do through that strategic process, or does it start with a very well-formed, clear idea that's come from the residents by the town council upwards? That's the only difference.
I suggest that that's where it should come bottom up, really. So, yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. Of course, though, they have to be realistic. They have to be within the constraints of what's deliverable on the strategic plan, and they have to be supported. And of course, all of those things are difficult. So it is actually quite a big ask. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on 1.6? No? Okay. We will move on to 1.7, develop starter units to provide affordable employment space and marine facilities. Anyone have any questions on Councillor Smith?
Yes. You know, obviously I note. Sorry?
You want a marine unit at home, is that?
Well, give it a few years, you know, with sea level rise, you don't know where we'll. No, that you know, I shouldn't be joking about these issues. Great to see this, but you're partly on track, Councillor Bastone. You know, obviously, you know, the developments at Batson are going to service a very specific part of the South Hams. And I would ask that we be, you know, I think we should be broadening our outlook. You know, I know there is a terrific demand for affordable employment space. I mean, other members will know the small industrial estate which is being developed at Beacon Park at Dartington. You know, the units there are let before they're built. You know, and I would ask that we broaden our outlook. You know, particularly, I would say this, but particularly, you know, the A38 corridor, which is, you know, a major, you know, employment opportunity up and down there. And yes, that's effectively the nub of the question. You know, I think we need to be looking. We need to be looking wider afield. I know we've got there are big projects in the pipeline with regard to the Freeport and you know, Langage Industrial Estate, but I think you will find there is a real demand for, small business accommodation across the South Hams.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I would say that the council strategy is exactly that, and that this action plan is just a specific part of it. So this isn't instead of, this is as well as. So the adopted policies are all very clear. So we have a regeneration investment strategy, which talks about opportunities for that. The historic success we've had in developing out units across the whole of the South Hams is sort of probably a new unit every other year, something like that. And the way we make that work, for absolute clarity, is through the planning system. So the only way we can afford to do it viably is for the Section 106 for employment on a site for that land to come to us, or possibly the units to be built and sold to us. But usually it's the land. So the opportunities are only there when they are, if you like, to an extent. So we can't. It's not viable to go and buy some land and build some units. It just doesn't work. There's one open market provider of that in the whole of the Southwest. And they have a very efficient model, and they are very experienced at doing it, and they have long-term plans. But through the planning system, that is absolutely the right way to do it. And we always look for those opportunities, and working with planners is so important to make sure we seek those opportunities. So I couldn't agree more.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Long.
Chairman, thank you. I think I can only, being the ward member that's got these two elements coming in, I can only applaud them. Okay, we're 15 years in the waiting for this to be delivered. And I think that's the big problem, that we need to speed up as much as we can. And I think the point's been made there that small areas, small groups of affordable units spread out, would be the way to go. And I know the difficulty of getting the land and pulling it together, but I think a concentration on that would help move things forward. And looking at this, it's a start, but I think we need to really sort of focus on, if we could, you've got 5 units in Salcombe, we could have easily filled 25. And I suspect that's the same with every small village, town around the South Hams. And I think there is a demand there. And I think we're a key player to try and deliver that. This is a good start. I'm glad that we're moving in this direction, but I think a lot of concentration's got to be made to move it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Long. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'd just like to add that I'm not quite sure why everybody thinks the council should be supplying these units. I mean, I think we've done very well in doing so, but if you look at the Churchstone industrial estate, that is entirely privately owned, and it's absolutely thriving. Now, I've got friends, not in the South Hams, but elsewhere, who have developed small business unit estates as part of their pension plan, and it's worked very well. So, I mean, it's not up to the council all the time to provide these things. They can be provided privately and be very successful. So I think we should get the message out there that there is an opportunity and that they are lacking, and get people to look around. And I'm sure there'll be farmers who can find a corner on their farm in a sustainable location, and things like that. And let's get private enterprise building these units if we need them so badly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearce. Any other questions on this last? No. Okay, right, members. Up on the board, you'll see the recommendation for this agenda item. Councillor McKay, did you want, you spoke earlier on about the Share Prosperity Fund and wanting to know more information. Noting from the report, Mr. Molyneux's advised me it's determined by the end of October. Should we be asking, would members like the details of the Share Prosperity Fund to come to ONS in November? Would that be something you would like?
I would welcome that, certainly, yeah, although the horse has bolted by then, it would have been good to have had a bit more input into it, but yeah, I would like to see it.
I'm happy to second that as an amendment to the recommendation where it says and make necessary recommendations if members are happy to support that. I mean, that will be a case of presenting what in fact has already been agreed, but just to give members the opportunity to understand more fully in the context of this theme how the Shared Prosperity Fund will apply. Is everyone happy with that? Mr. Molyneux?
What I was suggesting was actually that the outcome of the bid was brought back So at the point that, assuming that the government sticks to the timetable, which has changed already, that at the end of October or at the next ONS meeting after that point, that Mr. Shears or Mr. Brook come, or Councillor Bastone come back and advise members on what the outcome of the our bids were and any next steps that we would then be taking. That was my suggestion.
Yes, no, I am happy with that, but I'm not sure if this is the time to say this, but it is disappointing that members didn't have input into how this bid was being formulated, what was in it in some detail. And is there anything that can be done to ensure that members are more involved in these kind of bids for funds, for things which are important to the plans that the council have?
I may bring Mr. Brook in here. Part of the problem there, Councillor McKay, is sometimes the timing of these things and the deadlines that the government impose. It's simply just not practicable to convene a whole series of meetings. I think we did do member briefing, and you know, we actually have a lead member whose job it is to make sure that he thinks that we as officers are doing the right things. So I would say that that's my answer to that question. It's just sometimes just not practical, but we always try and update members. And we did do a member briefing, didn't we, Chris?
We did, and Chairman, through you, I think the way we try to resolve that challenge of timing is to take the aspirations of all members as approved by full council and find the opportunities from whatever the policy is from the government and match that to the clear, already consulted upon, stated and approved aspirations of the council. That's what we've done here. So if we'd asked all of you, everyone would have had rightly a different opinion because it would have reflected your own views, your own knowledge, your own patch. And that's fine. And that's, for some things, absolutely the right approach. When you've got a really significant project that you don't want to fail on, and I know we all support getting £1 million from the government to spend in South Hams to enhance the economy and, you know, be the best we can for our residents, we sometimes have to take effectively a constructive shortcut, and that is what has the council approved already, what are the policies in place and what are their priorities, and match it. And that's the approach we took here. So in other situations, it may be that we can take a different approach, but that's what we've done in this case. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, I think Councillor McKay, your comments are noted on that, and the response is given. I think we are where we are, aren't we, in that regard? Okay, so I'm happy to move the recommendation from the chair as shown on the board, which includes 3, the moving of TE 1.2 to Amber. Anyone happy to second that?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favour of the recommendation as on the screen? Okay. Anyone against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Okay. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Bastone.
Just like to thank the members for considering our report today. But I do want to stress our thanks to Chris, who has battled on his own. When you think there was a few months back, there were 3 people and he's covering the other 2's jobs. I think we owe him a debt of thanks for what he's doing. I've seen some of the work that he's done. It's been colossal, to be honest with you. And we should be grateful for that. Thank you.
And I think committee members will appreciate his mastery of his brief, Councillor Bastone, as well. Yeah. Okay. Right. Thank you very much for that. We will move on. My modern girl has decided to crash exactly this moment. So the next item is the leisure contract fusion quarterly update review. Councillor Hawkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Good morning. We've obviously got our able officers from Southampton District Council here to assist. I believe that we have Peter King and Claire Bill on Teams. Thank you, Peter. Just like to give you a brief introduction. As we all know, the leisure centre is facing challenging times. We've just obviously been through a very difficult period during COVID. The current energy and cost of living crisis has resulted in higher leisure operating costs, and customers re-evaluating their memberships and usage levels are impacting income levels. I'm a trustee as Councillor Bestone at Dartmouth Outdoor Pool, and we know from there the huge increase in costs of actually maintaining that pool and the energy costs for the future. So we have these issues obviously in the South Hams as well. The attached quarterly presentation by Fusion highlights key performance updates. Membership usage is remaining around 80% of pre-COVID levels, which we're pleased to say is just above the national average. And swim school numbers are very good, reaching March 2020 levels, with several centres at higher usage. And I know one of those centres, which is doing particularly well. New membership options have been introduced and membership catchment areas are attached for each centre. Going forward, there is considerable investment in our leisure centres taking place. We are pleased that last week at the full council meeting, the solar panel installation was supported. We are in discussion with Totnes Leisure Centre development with Tadpole and Fusion, and meetings are progressing with that so that we can do all we possibly can to actually put the investment we require in for Totnes in the autumn. First of all, I'd like to thank Fusion and Peter and his staff for all the hard work and effort that they do on behalf of our residents. As I've said, we are in a very, very hard financial time. Those times look like they're going to get even worse in the months, years ahead. If you listen to the BBC, it's almost like a doomsday scenario every morning, and I've actually decided not to listen to it anymore because it's so depressing when I get up in the mornings. We are in a very good situation. We are a small district council, which we have to note, and we are a small district council. And when I first got to South Hams Council many, many years ago, I remember when the 4 main towns were called area centres, and that is why the 4 towns have got leisure centres in them, and they are to support the parishes around them. We have got, it isn't in this contract and isn't part of South Hams, but there is a new leisure centre being built in Sherifford, and we are in a good situation that no closures have taken place in this period, and no closures are envisaged for the future. Continued investment, as I say, is planned. And I think that really is my introduction to this Fusion quarterly report. And I'll pass over to either to Peter King, I presume. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Good morning, Mr. King. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, one and all. Thanks for introducing the report. I believe we've also got Mr. Parkinson in the room as well, which I'm sure will be able to provide some information. Can I just double check that you can hear me correctly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So the report that we've attached and that has been circulated, we do a quarterly meeting with the council and councillors in order to update and progress. It does take us about an hour to go through the report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that as an appendices for question and answer, if I may. So I'll be able to go through any items from there. Thank you very much for Councillor Hawkins' introduction. I would like to say at this point, we are on a road to recovery. We are still trading below the 2019 numbers. We are seeing improvements. Numbers have got a bit stuck at the moment on our top line in terms of around 80% return to 2019. So we're doing as much as we humanly can in order to encourage usage, encourage participation, and further engage with the outer villages and boroughs in terms of the outreach work that's currently going on at the moment. The participation has taken a small drop since around May. So we were, as a contract, and I include Devon, which is West Devon and South Hams, we're around 60,000. We've seen a small reduction to around 58,000, which is also coinciding with a fairly flat income. Thank you for the summary on utilities. Utilities are a major concern for us. The other part of this is the pressure around the cost of living crisis. What we're experiencing is that customers are now making very much finance-led decisions. So the product might have fantastic value for money, but it is dropping down to price in some context. So we're seeing people moving around their membership categories in order to save money where they can. So we are looking at different options and how we can adapt our membership structure on that. There's two things I just wanted to add that from the previous discussions from the ONS. One is we identified a gap in the market for young adults, which has gone down extremely well. We created a membership for 16 up until the age of 18th birthday at a highly reduced rate, which has been really well received. We extended the concessionary hours to allow further activities within the centre. The family membership is under review. We do seem to have a bit of gap in our market at the moment, which we're trying to plug, which is the 8 to 12-year-olds. I don't necessarily think we have enough activities going on for this group. We also introduced the support for Ukrainian families. That is in conjunction and partnership with South Hams, and again is doing extremely well. So there are a number of items that we've introduced since we last met in order to improve footfall, look at concessionary options, and encourage users to return. If I may, can I just check in with Mr. Parkinson, see if he's anything that he would like to raise from the quarterly meeting that we held?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Peter. No, I think you covered everything from the quarterly report. Obviously, I would only point out from my quick overview report, just on the financial side, that we have now received all our financial management fee payments for last financial year, 21-22, and we have agreed and got confirmed for the monthly payments going forward from October for this financial year. So as I say, we've received all the variations from last year, and we are in confirmation for agreement for this year as well. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you both. Members, we've got the report. Mr. King suggests we take it as an appendix to ask questions on. So let's do that at this stage then. So we'll start with Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you. I had actually 3 questions, but the number's been answered, obviously. So I'm not going to go down that road. The finance side of it, is that on a plus side now, or because it's always a concern to me as well as the rest of the council, I suspect that we're actually we have been supporting Fusion, and we want to know if it's a plus or a minus on the bottom line at the moment, to be honest. And the other question is probably not for you, but why is the CAS taking so long to get up and running? Because that's obviously a good source of income.
Okay, if I can answer one, and I might have to defer the second question on that, I may, just for further knowledge. So first, we are trading in a loss position. What I would say is the council have been incredibly supportive about helping us with return from COVID-19. The last funding that we helped and received was obviously regards to COVID-19 to get us the centres reopen. We are in discussion with further support and help, obviously, as we've talked about the change of the management fee profile. And the help that we're also receiving around reducing our energy and hitting the climate crisis around renewable energy. At the moment, any shortfall is being subsidised by Fusion and has done since the start of the contract. We need to get to a minimum of a break-even point, and we're not there yet. Sorry, the other question, can you just repeat the question? I don't think I know enough about this to be able to comment. I might defer to my colleague Claire Bill, if I may, but could you just repeat that question for me?
Yeah, it was just a question on the CAS, really, and the restaurant areas. It's been 14 months since COVID, and they're still not up and running properly. And that seems to be a good source of income in most areas. So why is it taking so long? And is it now imminent that they're going to open?
Sure, certainly. Sorry, I misheard you slightly on that one. So the cafes, we've currently looking at a local providers. We held a tender process of which we had 19 expressions of interest. Unfortunately, they have not proceeded. I currently need to work on another way of doing it because the market said no at the moment. Whilst the cafes are a fantastic source and create a real stickiness and enjoyment in the centres, unfortunately they were operating at a loss. And due to the COVID-19 time, we couldn't operate loss-making areas of the business. There is an opportunity. It is taking a long time, and I totally appreciate that, to get back up and running. We are not keen to run as an internal function. We are trying to get to go to the market to bring in expertise or contractors. At the moment, it is slow at best, so we're reshaping that strategy. I'd hope to have a provision up and running by September.
As part of that, Mr. King, are you looking at one to run them all, or are you looking at tendering to?
Sorry, we asked for expressions of interest from anybody. So anybody that was eligible, would you like to tender to run the cafe? There were some various criterias about what tenders we would take forward. We would operate one in Ivy Bridge and a completely different operator in Meadowlands, or different operators across the sites, providing the tender submission stacked up. Unfortunately, they haven't stacked up as yet. So no, it doesn't need to be one to run them all. Could be one per centre.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, members, on this report? Councillor Spencer.
Good morning, Mr. King. I've got some observation, or just a couple of questions really. It's on our page 29. For your benefit, Mr. King, it's the heading of your report that says increasing participation and physical activity. Hopefully that guides you to the right place.
Yeah.
A couple of points there on community outreach. It says here postcode data for Fusion members has been analysed by South Hams wards. Could you just expand on that? Because I haven't seen any, and I was certainly one of the councillors who asked for it.
Okay, so following the meeting, it was requested obviously in the last overview and scrutiny meeting. We've then completed a postcode mapping and a mapping of members, not just on postcode. So we've got a detailed spread across the contract of where people are coming from and our users. This has been shared with South Hams. I'd have to check with Mr. Parkinson on where we're at with West Devon. This is also being used to guide some of the outreach work and areas that we need greater penetration. So if I could come to Councillor Parkinson, can I just double check the information and where we're at with that?
The catchment area analysis is part of the appendix in the report. So we have a mapping area analysis of every leisure centre. But I also know, and I think Claire Bill, our development manager, is online as well. Claire's undertaken a little bit of further work on a parish area analysis to where we know there's lower take up of memberships, and it will be probably of no surprise that they're on our areas further on the edges and further away from our centres. So I don't know if Claire is available as well. As you say, we've had sort of internal looking at the areas, and then we'll be able to, obviously as part of the additional support for the outreach post for South Hams, that can be part of where the work can be looked at in developing activities in the outlying areas. So I don't know if Claire wants to add a further comment on that area.
Hello, I'll try to, but can you hear me? Yes. Last time I tried to take my camera off or my mic off, it crashed, and it's crashed twice on me, so I'm sorry if I drop out on you. Yes, so the mapping that I sort of extended on, I think John's probably got a table that he can share with you if you haven't seen it, but it was really just taking that membership data broken down by ward. So the 4 sort of wards that had under 100 members, first was Woolwell, then we had Wembury and Brixham, Bickley and Cornwood, and then Malden and Little Hampstead, I think were probably, as John said, maybe the ones that were expected to show there. So that will help inform some of the outreach work that we plan to do. Just an update on the outreach. We are looking to recruit a 20-hour post, an outreach sort of sports development officer. The job ad will be going out at the beginning of August, and we're looking to interview early September and hope to have a person obviously in post as soon as we can after that. And that work will be very much working with some of those wards. I'd like to see them do a bit of an audit of what is already happening within those areas, and also working with Active Devon and looking at the consultation that they can provide. And Councillor Spencer, as you're aware, the consultation that we've had going on in Bickley.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Yeah.
Sorry, many apologies. For some reason, my screen didn't go down as far as your report, so I apologise. Thank you for pointing it out. Second question wrapped around the work that Claire just mentioned in Bickley and Cornwood. The background to that was my assertions that there was very little activity from my ward in terms of, in particular, the Ivy Bridge, which would centre, which would be the more local one. And we had a good meeting between Claire, myself, and Lisa Alford from Active Devon. And we put together a survey, which I thought was really good. The closing date for the return of that survey was the 3rd of July, and my understanding is that there were only 9 responses. Now, I owe an apology to both Lisa and to Claire, because I had the audacity to go away on holiday for 3 weeks in June. And members around here will know that I had some personal issues to deal with my wife on the return. So I did take my eye off the ball a little bit. But when I revisited it, the circulation of the this is called activity consultation, as it's called, went out to none of the 13 Facebook groups that I supplied as being the typical Facebook groups that cover the geographic area that is Bickley and Cornwood ward. It went out to a lot of other Facebook groups, most of which I've never heard of, if I'm going to be honest. But so I'm worried that the reach of that survey wasn't dealt with very well. And I'm wondering what opportunities there might be to go back and revisit this using those 13 Facebook groups, and using the fact that I can go out and physically promote it to the councils, to parish councils, accepting the fact that they're now not meeting until September. So I'd be interested on any views on that.
Yes, I can probably answer that one. I'm due to speak to Lisa next week. I don't think the consultation is closed. She was going to just leave it open. So yes, there's certainly scope for more work to be done on that, and for her to send to those groups. I'll pick up with her on that next week.
I'll resend out the list.
Thank you.
The closing date was the 3rd of July, according to the report and the discussions that we had initially. So it's useful to know that that is ongoing, and I'll get back in touch.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer.
That's great. Councillor Hawkins.
Great. I'm obviously sorry that consultation wasn't done up to your requirement, Councillor Spence. Claire has obviously confirmed that we will continue to do that consultation, and if you pass on those Facebook pages to Fusion, I'm sure that they will do that for you. Perhaps you could work very closely, Claire, with Councillor Spence, and with any other councillor that feels maybe a similar survey needs to be done in their patch. It is really important we get people through the leisure centres, and I think it's up to all our councillors to promote the leisure centres as much as possible. that we actually get people to go through the doors and to ensure that we actually get to that break-even limit as fast as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Long, I'm going to come to you, but first I'm going to go to Councillor Hopwood, who is joining us on Teams. Good morning, Councillor Hopwood. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Hopwood.
Thank you. Best one for me, apparently. Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak. I appreciate that. And it'll come as no surprise to you as what I'm going to say. With regards to outreach work, I endorse everything that Councillor Spencer has just said, although I didn't want a survey in my ward. But what has concerned me more than anything is at the last overview and scrutiny, when I brought this up about lack of any fusion activity within Woolwell, I had a good meeting, or I thought was a good meeting, with Claire Bill, and Claire very kindly gave me put me in touch with a gent who you thought could do some summer outreach work with the kids in Woolwell for football. And he emailed me, we arranged a meeting. He never turned up to the meeting and he hasn't answered me emails since. So whilst you may be trying to an extent, I feel that, especially in this case, the people you are trying to put in contact with members of this council don't have your back. And I was bitterly disappointed that this particular gent didn't bother to turn up to the meeting or get back to me. And I think you would probably need to take that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Claire, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I am surprised by that one as much as you are. I will follow that up. With that was with Plymouth Argyle Community Trust, which is very unlike them. So I will follow that up.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I've been asked to sort of say thanks for the moves on investment at Totnes, which is very welcome. Couple of questions, because the sort of main complaints that I've had from people about the fusion leisure centres has been obviously the lack of the cafes, and we've covered that. One of my questions is, given the issues within the hospitality sector and recruitment, is the provision of cafes realistic going forward? And I think, are you looking at that, as to whether you're really going to achieve it, and how long are you going to sit there sort of trying to replace them? The other point has been about the reception areas and the apparent lack of understanding of facilities or membership deals that were available. That seems to have come back, and I wonder about the sort of training of reception staff, or the ability. Some people have said they've turned up and there's been a lack of reception staff around at some of the centres. The other question that I have is your discussion on recruitment. How is that progressing? And given the recruitment issues that everybody else has, are you optimistic of achieving all of the recruitment that you wish to achieve?
Okay, I'll try and answer those three separate questions, if I may. So I think that's reception, recruitment, and we talked about the viability of the cafe. I think I would agree with you. We have a sort of a mixed quality across our receptionists or reception team. We've currently going through a retraining program at the moment. My colleague Lauren Parker, some of you may know, held a training session for our customer service advisors here again yesterday. We held one over at in West Devon a week and a half ago. The plan is to retrain all of our what's called our CSA team, our receptionist team. We're currently doing that at the moment. The other thing that we've also tried to do to support the understanding of the different membership structures on our reception desk now, we have printed lists of what the membership is, what's involved with the membership, what the name of the memberships mean. And on top of that, we've also got our core pay and play prices that people are able to see, take away as well. Both those items should help to make either the membership and the fees and charges a little bit clearer. A training program is currently in place in order to upskill. One of the things you've mentioned is about people on the desk not always knowing. We are trying to recruit heavily at the moment. We do have gaps That means some people are in training periods that are maybe don't have all the knowledge they particularly need. Anytime we have cover, unfortunately, our assistant managers also end up having to cover our reception desk. So it is a moving issue where we have sickness, vacancies, or not necessarily the right person in the right post at that moment. And it does cause a knock-on effect. We are trying to recruit into those posts, some level of success. The other recruitment issues we need qualified staff to run our centres. So anybody working on our pool needs an NPLQ, so a National Pool Leisure Qualification. These are in short supply. You would have seen, and those that are involved with anything like Salcombe Outdoor Pool or Dartmouth Outdoor Pool or some of the other trusts will see there's pools closing because they cannot find staff. We are putting on a free course. Anybody can attend, providing you fit the swimming criteria. We've got that going on at Dartmouth next week on the 25th. We've got another course happening at Totnes on the 8th. And all of this is trying to recruit and staff our centres. It is tough out there. It is hard to recruit. It is hard to recruit the right people. And we're also vying with a retail and hospitality market that are in the same position. So hopefully I've answered those two. The last one's cafe. I don't necessarily think the cafe it's not financially viable for us necessarily to run in-house at the moment. We are looking to the market to see if we can find a contractor. If we can't, I think we will have to look to an in-house model. I'm hoping to be in a position, I am talking to a contractor at the moment and how we could make it work. I hope to be up and running by September in at least a couple of the sites. But that's my forward view on that at the moment. Has that answered the three questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Councillor Austin.
In terms of the staffing issues, have you looked at reviewing your salary levels for, say, people who work in swimming pools?
The answer is yes. We had a bit of an odd payment structure based on age. I removed that in its entirety. So that has been removed in order to bring wage levels up. I think we are competitive in that marketplace, although what's happening now is people are offering more and more money. The other part of this is that we changed things like our swimming instructor wage. We brought everyone up to a standard level. Same with our group exercise instructors. So where we can, we have pushed wages up.
Can I just come back on that? How much have you increased wages by?
Bear with me. I've got a pump going off and sitting next to me. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear fine.
Okay. I don't, it's difficult because it's not one size fits all. I can't say, look, it's 1% across the region. I'd have to come back and give you an idea of percentage. The main one was around the age groups. We were paying under 16s one wage, and over 23s a different one. Everybody's come up to a minimum wage. I think we're at £9.50 around that sort of level as our core wage. But the other part of this is we've got to be really careful. The income is not there to support high wage bills. All we will do is we'll drive the bottom line down further if we're not careful. So it is a very fine balancing line between finding the right people, the right recruitment, but also being affordable to deliver.
I do realise you're in the same boat as everybody else at the moment, but yesterday the Bank of England was talking about inflation running to 11%. So, you know, given that inflation is likely to be at that level, you're having difficulty recruiting at the moment. What are your plans in terms of percentage increases over the next 6 to 12 months?
So this year, and I've discussed with my workforce as well, the likelihood of any change to pay structures this year are very, very unlikely. It will be based on how the business is performing and income opportunities. The next opportunity for wage review and annual salaries with the intention would be to be into early 2023. And again, it's going to have to be linked to the performance of the business. And that's the strategy we're currently around salaries at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. King. Councillor Kane.
Thank you. My question is quite simple. Do you have an optimistic outlook for your business? You've painted a pretty bleak picture. You're operating at a loss. You've got staffing problems. You're trying to increase staff. That's obviously going to increase your costs. And has been pointed out, the likelihood of being able to get staff when you've got inflation running at 10-11% and possibly higher. You say that you've reached 80% of your people using the facilities pre-COVID. So it is surprising if you are at that level that you're experiencing all these difficulties. There is the cost of living crisis coming down. Well, it's not coming down the pike, it's arrived.
Yes.
So that is going to impact your business. You seem to have problems with the cafe, which also would have increased footfall probably. You have a fairly comprehensive marketing campaign, according to your report. I'd like to understand really if that has actually had any impact. Given all these challenges, do you have an optimistic output? And the obvious question is, why do you have that optimistic outlook?
Sure. Okay.
If you do have one, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try and answer. I mean, I don't want to be the naysayer, the doom and gloom. There just has to be a touch of reality, and I'm not really talking just about Devon. If you actually look on a national scale, I am not talking just about Fusion having these same challenges. There is the same conversations and the same issues happening up and down the country with other providers. We get information off UK Active. There will be various lobbying at government to explain where we're at as a leisure provision. So I'm not sort of painting this as a Devon issue. This is an industry item, and this is an industry challenge that we face. The cost of living crisis, yes, that is causing further sort of I was going to say depression of people wanting to spend, because obviously as we get towards September, October, and these utility bills really start to bite, people are really starting to decide where they're spending their money. Am I optimistic? Yes, I'm going to be a bit sitting on the fence at the moment. The projections are to do better this year than we have done in previous years. Well, now we're about just about there or thereabouts. I think with a fair wind, with a good uplift in September, I think we should be able to claw back close to the 2019 trading figures. I think the centres are fantastic. We're seeing footfall. We have seen footfall increased. It's just dropped off very slightly over the summer. I'd expect to see an increase in footfall again from September. Obviously, then we hit a bit of a downturn over the winter period. I think January, February, March next year will be a key indication, because really it should be business as normal. And I think with the state of the facilities and the membership options we've got, I think the centres will continue to grow. How quickly that will happen, I think we're still in a 2.5, 3 year recovery phase, if I'm honest.
Mr. Money.
Thank you. And it links to what Councillor McKay asked. So you talk about your marketing campaign. So trying to understand why the footfall or the membership is at 80% still. So you've had a marketing campaign. So did the marketing campaign not attract anybody, or is it actual existing people who've then membership up?
So if I can come back on, if I start with the second point, if I may. So when we talk about the 80%, rather than the occupancy of the centre, we're talking about our return to pre-COVID numbers being at 80%. So when we're operating below the capacity levels of the centre, which would be probably, I'd have to check, but would probably be below the 80, way below the 80% mark. We were never operating at those numbers in 2019 in terms of capacity. So centres have capacity, that's not necessarily an issue. We are failing to return to pre-COVID performance, and we're about 80% of that. In terms of why the customers have changed their behaviour, there are a number of factors that have caused a change in behaviour, especially while we're here sitting in the summer. People have moved outdoors, water sports, running. People have started new options, so they have created new habits, and whether that be part of a digital provision or whether that be a part of a sports or events that they've started doing. So clubs, gig rowing has taken a huge input, suddenly seen a growth. So we're seeing the customer behave differently. We have conducted marketing campaigns to reach out to ex-members to tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why they should return. So there's been an extensive sort of win back campaign to try and get customers that we lost to return. To some extent it's worked, but we've sort of hit a sort of a bump in the road. It's sort of got pretty static. In terms of the marketing, the central marketing has been okay. We tend to do better from the local social media activity that we do, which is more about publicising the activities, inviting people to use the centre for free, no obligation, come and give it a try. We're increasing our fitness instructor provision in order to support customers along that journey. We're trying to change and adapt our programs. So we've added more things like bouncy castle and inflatables into the pool to make them more family friendly. I think what we're finding at the moment, we've won back as many of those that wanted to return. And then there's a finite market out there in terms of those that are looking to join. So we're either having to adapt our programs, review our pricing structure, to see if we can attract new members, as that's where we're at the moment. And I don't know, has that answered your query? Really, it's a change of customer behaviour, and we're having to attract new people. Really.
Yeah, that's great, Mr. Cow. I'm going to bring the lead member in, Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Peter. I think councillors have got to be realistic. We have still got 4 leisure centres in our 4 main towns, serving our parishes around them. We haven't closed any centres, and we don't intend to close any centres, but we have to be realistic that the leisure centres at the present moment are still losing money. Fusion are doing their best, and I think, yes, we are optimistic because we've put a considerable amount of investment in running those centres in the last 12 months. We're putting a considerable amount of investment into the centres. Hopefully we will be bringing forward to a future council meeting the redevelopment of Totnes Leisure Centre. I think what would be helpful perhaps for a future quarterly review, Chairman, if I can just suggest, is that when Fusion have got the new outreach officer in place, that perhaps that officer could come to this committee and actually tell us what she's doing, he's doing, how she's getting out there to those communities that at the present moment are not being contacted properly. And I think also what would be helpful, because I know we've had private conversations with your good self, is perhaps a price comparison with private leisure centres in the area, because that would be very, very useful as well, so that we could all see the issues and concerns and difficulties that you are having on bringing people over to our leisure centres.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. I'm very happy to be part of that process, and I know the committee would welcome, an outreach officer coming to ONS to talk to us. I have a question, if I may. Mr. King, from a leisure centre point of view, I think the unique selling point of Fusion Leisure Centres, certainly from a swimming point of view, is the fact that one can simply pay and turn up, and that is the beauty of the municipal leisure centre, if you like. Is it still the case that you can't just turn up anymore, that you have to pre-book? And if
So we sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off then. Did I miss part of the question? No, you can turn up. We are asking for booking. It helps us manage our workforce. It helps us to know how busy the pools are going to be, and whether we need to try and get more people in. Effectively, you could turn up. You can ring. You can book on the app. You can book on the website. We are not going to turn anybody away that would wants to come and use the facility. What I would say, though, those that are booking, and if we've got a finite capacity, will obviously be have a slot. Those that turn up, and if we're full, we won't be able to accommodate. And that's why we try and encourage booking. But no, you can turn up.
So the natural follow-on from that then is do you know how often it is the case that a swimming pool is at capacity? And the reason I ask this is because, you know, particularly understandably during COVID, one had to book in advance. But I know anecdotally of situations, you know, when the rules were relaxed, when bookings were still taking place, when somebody would be asked, can we go swimming? And they would try and book and they couldn't because there were no booking slots available. And so the answer was, well, yes, we can go swimming, but not till a week on Wednesday, you know, and you know, and if that's because it's fulfilling, you know, the necessary booking arrangements because of COVID, I think everyone understands that. But if that's not the case anymore, and that the pools aren't at capacity, then I think Fusion really ought to be shouting about the fact that their best unique selling point from a swimming point of view is that you can just pitch up. And I don't think people are fully aware of that.
Yeah, so the pools, what's holding back? There's two items that hold back capacities of pools. One is the number of qualified people per amount of water. So you have to have a certain number of lifeguards per user, and it's roughly, and it does change per pool, per type and shape and whatever, but it's roughly one lifeguard to 30 people. You'd normally, or you could run a pool with 3 lifeguards, giving us sort of a capacity of 90 to 100. That at the moment is our limiting factor, is getting enough qualified people to be able to increase the capacities of the pool. Some centres doing better than others. The one that we're really challenged with at the moment is Quayside, and that's why we're running 2 qualifications in order to qualify more staff that we can increase capacities. The other part of this is there is always demand or high demand at certain times of the day. And that just means that everybody wants to come all at once. And then we have high footfall, but big chunks of the day where we don't. And it's how we manage that high footfall. But there is I don't know how often we're hitting the capacity number. Our limiting factor at the moment is staffing.
Thank you. All I would say is that if you know, you should be telling us that. Tell the public. If you know that it's going to be quiet on a Saturday at 4 o'clock, then let the public know that. I think that would be really beneficial. The more we had this conversation last time, ONS, but I think the more communication that you can pass out to the public on these things, I think so much the better. I don't think there's anybody in this room who wants anything other than Fusion to succeed. You know, they are our leisure centres. We want them to work. You know, I think in so doing, we need to be putting those messages out loud and clear to make it as easy as possible for people to turn up, because that is the unique selling point, the fact that you can just turn up.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree, and some of the things you will see on social media, especially over the hot weekend, it's don't forget us, the pool's open, come visit us, come and take part. We have availability. So they are ad hoc posts that will go out across all the sites that will say, come and swim, we've got space. Yes, I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Members, any other questions on this report? Okay, well, thank you very much to all of you from Fusion, and thanks to officers and thanks to Councillor Hawkins. The recommendation is simply that we note the contents and progress of Fusion's quarterly report. I'm happy to move that from the chair. Okay, everyone in favour of that? So noted. Thank you all very much. That's grand. Thank you. Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. King. That's great. Cheers. We will move on then to the next agenda item, which is number 9, section 106 monies review. So members, you will remember that we received a report on a previous overview and scrutiny agenda, which was delayed and put back till today. This item is a verbal discussion and the attached appendices are presented as background information. So, hello, Alexis, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, specifically on open space, sport and recreation, because that's my area.
Members, anyone have questions? I mean, I've got at least one, but I'm happy to ascertain it.
Comment really, just to thank Alexis for looking after all the 106s and the open spaces and the play areas. Worked quite hard on that and it's very good. And you very kindly forwarded me yesterday as a member, where we've got money left in my ward that needs to be looked at for the period that it's still standing for. So the main thing is we don't miss out on when it runs out of time. So thank you, Alexis, for looking after us. Thank you very much, and great job you've done.
I see we've also got Alex Rayhag online as well for questions on affordable housing as well. Councillor McKay.
Yes, I represent one of the wards that have zero Section 106 monies allocated to them because it's a rural ward and there hasn't been any housing building or anything like that going on. So, but that's not to say that there aren't lots of projects that need funding, and the unallocated monies, I would like to see that being made available to wards like mine. I noticed that Dartmouth, despite the fact that they get loads of Section 106 money, is also out of the unallocated monies managed to snaffle 23,000. It would be good if that those monies were reserved for those wards that don't have the privilege of having Section 106 money. Is that possible?
So unfortunately, it has to be linked to the development. So normally that means.
It has no condition. So that this money is next to it's not connected to or is allowed to be used outside of the particular development that's being.
Okay, I'd have to get a bit of clarification on that. I can see in the deposits with no conditions, there's a couple in Bigbury, which I felt were connected to those developments. I think that money you referred to in Dartmouth has now been spent.
Yeah. But does this mean? I mean, this may be my misunderstanding, but does it still have to be used within the ward in which it arises? It does.
Right, I'm gonna call Councillor Hawkins in here, no doubt because he objects to the verb to snaffle. Carry on, Councillor Hawkins.
Dartmouth never snaffles anything, and we've never got enough money for our community. Obviously, Councillor McKay hasn't seen the report that there's 450 houses being put into Tuckenhave this winter. So, tongue in cheek. Plenty of 106, about 450. You'll get nearly £800,000 to spend. So I don't think the residents will be too happy in Tuckenhave, and the highways would probably need considerable infrastructure. Obviously, as the lead member for leisure and recreation and open space and playgrounds, one of the greatest things I get is when the officers contact us and ask for permission to spend money in our communities that have had development. And it is a great shame that other communities can't have this, but that is how S106 funds are allocated. And we have spent a considerable amount of money over the last few years with play areas in the South Hams. Some are absolutely fantastic. Well, all of them are absolutely fantastic.
Owned by the council.
But that is how S106 funds are created and allocated, and it is up to parishes, and I'm a parish councillor and declare an interest in Kingsware. If we need a new play area or new play equipment, we have to fund it ourselves. But I would just like to thank the officers very much, both ladies, for all the hard work and effort they do in this, and it's up to us as local members to ensure that those unallocated funds allocated to communities don't get sent back to a developer. We need to spend that money as fast as we possibly can, and don't let that developer get any money back that we need to spend on our communities.
I just wanted to say that it's not always on our land that we spend these funds. So if parish councils own play areas, then they're eligible for funds. And with the sports funding, that often goes to sports clubs who are completely, you know, yeah, and it's linked to the places where that development is.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Chair. First point that I'd make is that you know, there's nearly £6 million which we're holding, which you know, is a considerable sum of money, and you know, as a council and as councillors, we ought to be really sort of working hard to try and get that money, you know, back out into the communities where it's allocated. There's a couple. Right at the top, it says the 1.6 for Langage and Sherifford. Now, Councillor Hawkins made mention of the fact that there is plans for a leisure centre at Sherifford. So perhaps he could tell us about that. And then, as a second question, I understand the third bullet point there is 1.6 billion for homes and built and natural environment delivery. I understand that money, it can be moved around in that pot. Can you explain that, Alexis? With regard to housing, etc. The information that I understood that money can be moved around.
It might be better for Alex Rahag to answer that, but I think that for affordable housing, it's often allowed to be spent across the district rather than specifically in the parish or nearby sites.
Come in, Alex. Alex, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, Alexis is right there. We can spend that money elsewhere in the district. We do try to spend it where it's been in the locality where it's been collected, but we wouldn't want to see that money going back to a developer. So if we know that there is no chance of any development coming forward, we would work with adjoining communities, the wider area, to ensure that that is spent on the purpose it was collected for, which is affordable housing in my side of things. Obviously, Alexis has got her plans for the other bits and pieces. All right.
Yeah. Great, thanks. Councillor Baldry.
Thank you, Jim. Just to a couple of points to make in answer to Councillor McKay. I actually support the idea that the money should be spent locally, because 106 money there, with the exception of the affordable housing element, is there to compensate for having the extra people living in your area. And I think it is right that it is therefore spent on things like sport and recreation and the built and natural environment within the area where the additional people are going to live. As a second point, we have inherited from some of the S106 money from our predecessors who have said where they wanted to have it allocated. And I've got one case, well, we have one case, Chairman, where money was allocated to provide, probably in the end, gold-plated pavilion at Butts Park, because so much money kept on getting given by the then parish council some years ago to spend on Butts Park in Newton Ferrers. However, in the case of Langage, also inherited from our predecessors, significant sums of money to spend on art projects. And goodness only knows what sort of art projects you can provide at Langage to spend these enormous sums of money. So there is, and I found the officers very, very helpful in bending the rules a little bit, so we don't have to stick strictly to the way in which the money was allocated. But there are predecessor problems where people were silly in the past. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm sure for the avoidance of doubt, rules are always stringently followed and not bent or stroked or anything like that at all. But I take your point entirely, Councillor Baldry. I was going to raise that there is a section 106 for public art, as you say, which is a six-figure sum. Now, if you're going to ask ward members to to decide how that could be spent. I fully profess to being slightly out of my depth in that regard. So I think there are challenges. Could we come back to Sherifford? I know Councillor Smith was asking about Sherifford.
John, well, whoever, I don't mind.
I was going to ask Chairman, the Sherifford Leisure Centre is not in this district. The leisure centre is in Plymouth City Council, who are awash with money compared with us. I would not want our money spent there.
True, but then it will benefit our residents in the Sherifford area. I'd just be interested. I understand it's probably within, to what you were saying, it's within the Plymouth part of the Sherifford development. And when's it scheduled to be built? When?
Can I help?
Yeah.
Unless you know the answer, Jonathan. The answer is that the leisure centre, including the swimming pool, is now the subject of a planning application to Plymouth City Council.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, effectively, we will have 5 leisure centres, that Southampton residents will have access to once that one's built.
Well, if you're stretching the point, Councillor, they already have access to Tor Bay leisure centres. They have access to Team Bridge, and in the case of my end of the district, we have full access to Plymouth.
Indeed. Good.
Chairman, just quickly, it links very much back to the previous item and the heat mapping. It'd be worth councillors revisiting that after this discussion. You can see how members of Tor Bay and members of Plymouth areas, residents already use our leisure centres. And if we flipped it, of course, we'd find the people that live in Southampton invariably use the Life Centre in Plymouth. So that, additional facilities benefit the people near them, but they also benefit the people in the periphery.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I come back to questions, I know there are still questions. My question, Alexis, specifically was so on the point that Councillor Baldry raised, for example, where there are specific significant projects that have been earmarked over a long period of time. What approach should all members be taking in that regard?
So I think in my area, some of the contributions have sat there for quite a long time, and there are aspirations in the parish for projects, but they haven't yet come forward. So from my point of view, what I'm mainly doing is keeping an eye on when the deadline for spending those are, and doing what I can to encourage groups in that area to make applications. I know you specifically referred to that public art contribution, and Chris Brook might want to also come in, but I think that it was then agreed with the owner of the power station that could be put towards the construction of the starter units.
I think the critical part is that the payer of that money is happy that money is spent in a different way. And I think it's for this council to prioritise how that money is spent. And my personal view would be that anything that generates good economic outcomes for our residents at Langage, which is a huge development site deliberately for employment, would be potentially a better use of it than public art. But maybe members have a different view.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I would suggest that you can tell therein lies the difference, Mr. Brook, between you as an officer and us as councillors, because you might very well say that public art is not worth as much as money-making opportunities, but I think we would possibly be less advised to say that for the furore that could create. But yeah, I take the point. Although, having said that, I think the evidence has shown, I think, Alexis, you would agree, is it not quite difficult to change? Quite arduous, quite time-consuming, quite legal, quite costly to do that.
Yeah, so on occasion we have done a deed of variation to a Section 106 agreement to change what we spend funds on. There are legal costs to both sides for that process, and it shouldn't take a long time, but sometimes it inevitably takes longer than you would like. So it's easier if we keep the clauses in the Section 106 agreement as flexible as possible to start with.
Absolutely. Thank you, members. Sorry. Councillor Jackson and then Councillor Long.
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to note that Councillor Callaghan worked really hard to get some money that had sort of disappeared, which is now going towards the skateboard in Kingsbridge. So thanks to you and
Grant. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to thank Alex and Alexis for the work you do with the Section 106. I think it is appreciated, and I think we perhaps don't know how much hard work goes in the background, and a lot of time spent negotiating with groups and others. And I think for me, I'd say to Alexis, I know you've been very active in approaching groups, organisations to sort of try and get some of those monies, which the time is getting close. And so certainly over the last year, you've achieved a lot of that in the Dorking and Thurleston ward, and I appreciate that and thank you for that. I think the big issue, if you can confirm it, is in a lot of these circumstances is the lead time in getting projects forward. And I know we've got one or two in the ward where COVID hasn't helped, where those projects sort of dropped off from organisations, and it's really, isn't it really sort of trying to sort of sometimes reinvigorate those that are the points that are the issues?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that COVID stopped activity a bit, especially because we're often reliant on sports clubs or parish councils developing projects because it's on their land. And so that relies on potentially volunteer time. So when it's our own projects, then we can be a bit more proactive about trying to take them forward and get tenders out, etc. But yeah, so there are difficulties where we're relying on other parties to develop projects. And I think as well, we've had a few projects recently where build costs for things like clubhouses have gone up a lot. And that's kind of put a hold on a few projects.
Just one more. Just wanted to raise the point. Can I thank you for the point that obviously with a lot of playground areas and that, the fact that we now look at having maintenance within the section 106 within the agreement, because I think in the past it's been allocated to equipment, and then particularly when it's been going to parishes, they've had the ongoing maintenance that has been the issue and the funding. But I think I'm pleased to see that that has now changed and we've got more maintenance in there.
Yeah, so in the new JLP developer contributions evidence base, we look to take contributions towards the ongoing maintenance. So, and we can then pass that across if it's a parish council or town council who owns that area.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, in which case I just thank you, Alexis, and Alex as well online. Thank you very much for your support. And as I say, I know there's a lot of appetite from ward members. Please do talk to us if you need money to be supported in terms of allocations. Please come to us. I know we're very open to those conversations. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on then, and I believe the next item is a verbal update on the state of legal services. I don't know who's giving that.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a short update. The update is that since the last committee, a further member of staff has resigned, but we are continuing to advertise to fill all vacancies, but also exploring alternatives with other local authorities.
So just to be clear, does that mean we're left with Mr. Fairburn then?
Nearly.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. I know that if Councillor Birch was here, and I appreciate that he isn't, at the last meeting he wanted to set up a task and finish looking into it, which wasn't supported. But I think what that did suggest is that there was a lot of concern around this table of the progress being made, and it sounds like the progress that's been made has actually been negative since the last meeting, which is unfortunate. Mr. Melanie.
So in terms of Mr. Fairburn has interviewed candidates who he didn't feel were suitable, and I would always recommend that we shouldn't just take anybody. We need to get people who are appropriate. So he has conducted interviews. He declined to make job offers. As a senior leadership team, we've been looking at the issue, and in particularly the pay levels. And we've commissioned a piece of work with our HR team to look at the rates of pay across the Devon districts and our neighbouring authorities, including Colby and Plymouth, in terms of what senior solicitors get paid, and in fact some of the other technical roles that we have difficulty recruiting. And we are looking at the next steps of that. So we've now got some of that data back. We looked at some of that data this week, and we are in the process of putting together what our views should be back to members in terms of recommendations going forward.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions? Councillor Spurden.
Chairman. Yourself and I were both members of Dartmoor National Park, and the National Park don't actually have their own legal team. They, in inverted commas, buy in legal, the presence of legal people for PM and the authority meetings, etc., and for legal work. I can't imagine that Devon County Council has got, spare capacity, but I just wonder if that might be an option to look at.
So thank you, Councillor Smurden. We have made an agreement with, I think it's Exeter City Council, in terms of getting some additional legal support from them, and we have approached other councils to ask for their availability. Unfortunately, I think there is a general shortage across the piece, but we have reached an agreement, and we will be commissioning some work with, I think it's Exeter City Council. So we are taking steps to ensure that essential stuff keeps happening.
Thank you very much. Any other points to be raised on this? Councillor Austin.
Well, just really to say that there's a theme here running from the leisure centres across to the legal system and elsewhere as well. And bearing in mind, we're looking at taking the waste collection back in house as well towards the end of the year. You've got pending 11% inflation rises, staff shortages increasing, and it's probably going to be the biggest challenge we face in terms of the next few years, isn't it?
I don't disagree, Councillor Austin. We've had challenges recruiting to some of our seasonal staff as well. We've had challenges with civil enforcement officers, and we actually went as far as the manager actually doing sort of standing outside the job centre and doing sessions. And actually, I would say that it's taken a lot of time and effort, but we've actually got some really good people as a result of that. But instead of just going and creating an advert and waiting for people to apply, I think what we've learned is we have to put a bit more effort into it, and that's what we've started to do. And there are people out there, just got to try a lot harder to get those people.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone happy? I think. Well, not happy, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Okay. Right. We'll move on. Okay. Item 11 is task and finish group updates. Have we got any outstanding task and finish groups?
Well, yes, Chairman, the housing one, the report on that is to all intents and purposes finished, but the leader has asked that be presented at the September executive, so we're heading towards that.
Grand, thank you. The other point is that the last the executive requested that we set up a task and finish to support officers in the development of an electric vehicle charging strategy for the district. The executive asked for the draft strategy to be considered in October 22. I mean, I spoke to Mr. Powell after the meeting, after the executive meeting, and he was slightly concerned at the timescales of a task and finish being set up now, with August shortly to be upon us, being effective in terms of delivering back by those timescales. But I very deliberately, and I make no apology for this, members, on purpose, so I very deliberately haven't sewn the membership of that committee nor its chair up in advance. I know it has been custom and practice previously that it has been announced that these will be the members of the task and finish group and this will be the chair. Well, I don't think it's the job of this meeting to appoint the chair, frankly. I think it's the job of the task and finish committee to appoint their own chair. And I don't think it's my job as the chairman of Scrutiny to select or cajole or encourage members to join the task and finish. I don't think that's the right way of doing it at all, personally. I think we either appoint from this committee today because we're members of ONS, or members have had the, I haven't had emails from other members asking to be members of this committee. The leader has pointed out to me that it is open to anybody who wishes to join. That's true. Mr. White has told me from a political point of view, whilst the best practice would strive for political balance, there is no requirement for a task and finish group to be politically balanced. And recently, groups have consisted of 5 members, which has given them some resilience in the event of appointed members not being able to attend every meeting. So actually, we are very much, it is actually a case that it is in our gift as to how people are appointed. And then once Task and Finish Committee meets, it's in their gift as to who chairs. So my point of this conversation now is to ask whether any members from this committee who are here today would express an interest in being part of a short Task and Finish group looking at this particular subject. That's my first question. Councillor Spencer, you would. Councillor McKay, you would. Councillor Long, you would. Any other members? I mean, I'm certainly happy to be involved, although without wishing to avoid everything I've just said, I don't want to be chairing it. I don't think that's right, but I'm happy to be involved. So, you know, it would be good to have a 5th member. If we haven't got any volunteers from this meeting today, then I will send out. I
was going to say, you've got a number of members who couldn't, the committee has been able to attend. So
I'll send an email out today asking for other members. And if I won't stand if I don't need to, but I'm happy to. Councillor Baldry.
I'm not volunteering to be on the group. I think it's, Mr. Molyneux will correct me, it is within Councillor Holway's portfolio, not mine. But as there is a good chance they will go in onto the district car parks, I would like to attend the meetings.
You'll be very welcome to do so, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure that will be the case. Okay, what I will do then is I will take the expressions of interest from today and I will send out to well, the leader would like it. The leader would like it finished as per the agenda papers for the executive to consider at its meeting in October. That's not insurmountable because if you have a start meeting in early August and then you meet in September and October, we did that last year with the Task and Finish on the leisure centre. The one I chaired. The localities. We did that on localities. We turned localities around in the same time period. With officer support, it's perfectly possible. But I really don't believe in. I hope you don't mind, members, but I don't believe in sewing it up in advance. I think it's important people volunteer because they want to be involved. Okay. It is to support officers in the development of an electric vehicle charging strategy for the district, and the draft strategy will be considered by the executive at its meeting in October. So clearly, officers have been given a timeline.
But there was an APS report on this very subject, which a pretty miserable report, I have to say, but nonetheless, it was commissioned by council to advise on exactly this subject. Yeah.
I didn't know that, but I'm going to bounce to Mr. Brooke.
Yeah, absolutely right. There was, and I agree, it was pretty miserable. We commissioned it, and they didn't really deliver. It did conclude that we were ahead of the average, ahead of the curve in terms of delivering. They felt that we were doing a good job in terms of delivering in our car parks. They recognised the challenge for delivering on street charging, given that was a DCC issue essentially, not a left-hand issue. But what we really asked it to do was tell us where we should be putting solar panels over our car parks and link that into battery storage and EV charging, if indeed it was possible. And they singularly failed. But it's a useful background in terms of policy.
Okay, thank you.
The exec is the 13th of October, apparently.
Okay. Well, as I say, I did speak to Mr. Powell, and he was, a little bit concerned about the timescale. But if he's having to do that for the executive, then this group would simply be supporting that. So at the moment, Councillors McKay, Long, and Spencer have expressed an interest. I'm certainly going to ask Councillor Chown if he's interested, because I know this is very much his bag. And see if we can fill the 5th spot with somebody who's not been here today. If not, I will happily take part. So I'll do that in the next couple of days, members, if you're happy with that. And then the group at its first meeting will be able to constitute itself with a chair at that point. Are we happy with that approach? Yep. Yes. Yes. Well, I think that's the normal way Task and Finish are done now. Anything thinking about carbon footprint and the like, it would seem unfortunate if we were all being dragged into policy, wouldn't it? Absolutely.
Well, the chairman, I would just say, and I'm sure Mr. Brooke would back me up on. The officer with specialist knowledge on this is Emma Widdicombe. Would that be correct?
I think it's It's a bit of a mixture, if I'm honest. So
Adam as well, I guess.
Adam probably, but Emma's very involved
Emma-
because
Emma-
of the car parking
Yeah.
position, and she has historically successfully delivered the procurement. As
I
now
think Councillor Smith, it'll be rather as Councillor Baldry wants to be involved with executive responsibility for car parking, so I'm sure Emma will be involved in some way with operational responsibility, but actually as a portfolio, it'll be Councillor Holway and it'll be Adam, won't it, from the green agenda? Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, absolutely. But when I've had discussions around this subject, Emma has been the person with the specialist knowledge. But we'll leave that.
We'll leave that, yes.
Yeah, we'll
Okay, that's fine.
Councillor Baldry's about to tell me off, I think. He's got that look. in his eye.
I'm just going to say, I because the portfolios have to be allocated somewhere, Councillor Holway portfolio, I'm going to tell you off because I think Adam has as much knowledge as Emma.
Okay.
Emma has accumulated an enormous amount of knowledge.
Right. I consider myself told.
Okay, members, the final item on today's agenda is agenda item 12, which is the committee work programme, latest version, just for us to look at. So
I did have an issue on this, which is the last meeting. Apparently, I don't think we have that.
no, I've seen you sent that. You've sent that to Democratic Services, haven't you, Councillor Austin? Yeah. Have you had a response yet?
No, I mean, it's 2 weeks before the election. Not really quite. I don't think we can even hold it then. But it's 6 weeks. Also, it has to be before 23rd.
Mr. Mullany.
So, in terms of this committee and the role of this committee, my view is that, and I will confirm it with the monitoring officer and Darryl, but my view is as long as we're not making political decisions, then it's okay to have the meeting. If we start making political statements, then that's so for example, full council or an executive where there might be, but normal decisions can be made in relation to the normal council business. So, but I'll confirm that and update at the next meeting.
Well, you could argue with a room full of politicians, we're likely to be making political decisions 2 weeks before an election, wouldn't you, really? I mean.
Yeah, but Councillor Austin, it's whether they're partisan or not. I'm trying very hard, as you will have seen at this and at the last meeting, for us to be a critical friend that is, that is bipartisan and is not party political. I'm going to continue doing that to the best of my ability. But if the monitoring officer, well, I guess it'll be for the monitoring officer to rule, won't it? Is the point. Any other observations, questions? I have one, which is a question I asked last time, which is, are we anywhere further on with Devon and Somerset Fire? South West Ambulance.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, I cannot get a response. I do know that the SWAST South West Ambulance have gone to Devon County Council to their, I think it was their ONS group. I have the report that they gave to them if you would like me to send it around to the group, but I'm getting absolutely nowhere.
I think the report came from Councillor Brazil, didn't it, in the first place? Is that right?
No, I found it on Devon County Council site, but it could well be the same one. I'm not sure.
It's the same one I sent through. If you found it on the county website, I think it would be very useful to send around to all members as a starting point, at least. Yeah.
And this request not come from the chief executive and the leader. I mean, it seems you're being ignored. So.
It can, but ultimately the thing is, you don't have, as a non-governmental organisation, you don't have to attend this meeting. Mr. Molyneux?
Yeah, we can do that. Absolutely, we will do that.
Councillor Ray.
Can I ask what exactly are you after? A report from who?
The request was that South West Ambulance Trust.
South West Ambulance
Trust,
yes.
So that this committee would have the opportunity to talk to them about the chief exec's, what his strategic policies are towards waiting times and ambulance response times and the like. It was just for this committee to have the opportunity to understand some of the issues that they're facing.
I understand, because I wasn't sure if it was Devon Air Ambulance.
No.
It is
It's the SWAT, South Ambulance Service
Well,
Trust.
given that how long the queues are outside of every hospital, I don't know if they've got time to go anywhere at present.
Except of course, Councillor Rowe, that it's very likely that their chief exec will be involved in that
yes,
process. He might very well have time to come to us.
Well, when I'm next at Torbay Council of Governors, which is on the 4th of August, I will mention it to the chair there.
We'll be very grateful. Okay. Any other questions on the work programme? Anything to add? Are we broadly happy with what's there, Mr. Molyneux? We are. Okay, members, I don't think there's anything else today. Then I will thank you for your time. At 12:30, I will declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.